The Absurd Podcast.
É assim que você assiste um filme sem uma Philips de Wide, com cortes nas laterais. Philips de Wide é a TV do futuro. 33% a mais de imagem, alta resolução e sem cortes laterais.
Widescreen D-Wide Philips.
So, welcome back, guys. In the first episode, we talked about the elements of absurdity in advertisements, the general perception of these ads, and certain factors or biases that plays a role while watching these ads. In this episode, we'll further discuss the absurdity in ads more from a marketing perspective.
Okay, pardon my interruption, but then at the end of the first episode, you mentioned that absurdity cannot be used in every single ad to gain attention, right? Can you please elaborate on what products can use absurdity to gauge more audience? Or rather, which product category do you think absurd ads are more suitable for?
I can take up this question. So I think absurd ads are more suited for products that won't require a lot of thinking before buying, or you could say that they are low involvement products. So I don't think any of the high involvement products will go for absurd ads.
I don't think it is entirely true. I'll try to explain this with the help of a concept called FCB model. So as you can see on the screen, on y-axis we have the amount of involvement that the consumer has in the process of purchasing. On the other hand, on x-axis we have divided based on how a consumer makes that purchasing decision, whether it is rational or emotional. On quadrant 1, we have products that usually comes at a higher cost and we buy only once in a lifetime. For example, your house or your land ownings. On quadrant 2, we usually have purchases driven by emotions and are for satisfying our self-ego. For example, your beauty products or luxury cars. While coming to the low involvement segment, in quadrant 3, we usually have things that we buy again and again. For example, your monthly groceries. And lastly, the quadrant 4, we have products that we usually buy under impulsive purchases or the products which we buy under peer pressure. For example, cigarette and alcohol.
Oh, that was a nice explanation. I can think of a few ads like 5-star and Men Will Be an ad which come under the low involvement segment. But I can't think of any of the ads that come under the high involvement segment.
Is it? Wait, let me show you an ad.
Hey!
So that was an absurd ad for a luxury car, a high involvement product. To further explore and get an expert opinion, we'll now talk to Professor Sourav Borah, an expert in marketing domain and a faculty at IIM Ahmedabad.
So good evening, Professor. We are here to know more about the marketing side of why advertisers use absurdity in their advertising campaigns. So can you please explain this concept of using absurdity in advertising campaigns?
So the one of the central reasons why advertisers might use absurdity is to stand out. So any humor ad, anything related to absurdity, of course absurdity is multiple dimensions, but humor is one of the dimensions. So therefore what happens is that once you use absurdity, it helps you to stand out, okay, on the crowd. So that is one of the major reasons why one might use absurdity, okay. Over a period of time, if you look at all research has shown that absurdity definitely increases recall of the ad.
Right, yes.
Okay, and in some cases it also increases recall of the brand. Okay, but then that has another conditions, but recall of the ad for sure.
That's why we can see certain ads are there in a series of ads. Like for example, 5-star, there is a series of ads that are based on the similar concept. Sir, I want to know, how does the use of absurdity in advertising impact consumer engagement and attention?
So attention, definitely yes. Okay, it definitely affect attention. Engagement, this is not very clear. Okay, so for example, if you look at the entire engagement literature, okay, engagement has multiple dimensions again. Okay, so one of the thing about engagement is about word of mouth. So it is particularly once you are engaged, you start talking about it. So therefore, absurdity increases the likelihood of talking about the ad. So that is an advantage. But engagement also means that you are more likely to pay more, right? So that also is a part of engagement. But will it affect other dimensions? That is remains to be seen. That is not very clear.
So since let's just say that it gets the customer's attention for some time. So do you think there is any psychological factor behind it? Let's just say some kind of central processing or peripheral processing.
So it's basically for its cognitive engagement, you can think about, right? So it's basically more cognitive processes. So what happens is that you start processing the ad. Right. So otherwise you would have skipped it. Now because of the absurdity, you start processing. So all the absurdity studies have shown that there is a level of cognitive involvement that start taking place with the ad. Okay. Now once you start getting cognitively involved, that means they are going to process the elements. Will it be central or peripheral? So what is central root of processing? It's central root of processing meaning you are going to compare, contrast every element. That is central. What is peripheral? You go outside. That means you are not concerned about central elements of the brand, but you are concerned about something in the periphery. So more or less is periphery. But you are engaged. So you are engaged with the ad, but not sure whether you are engaged with the brand or not. So that's the critical part of this entire thing.
We have seen that certain brands have like a kind of image that they create, that they have amongst the customers. So how do marketers ensure that such advertising aligns with the brand's message?
So one of the thing about absurdity is, if you think that your consumer base is already have a positive attitude towards the brand, right? In that case, it is good idea to stay away. Stay away from using absurdity. Okay. But if you think that inherently about the product category, there is some stigma, right? Then absurdity helps.
Stigma as in?
So stigma as in there is inherent negative attitude. Okay. So think about an ad like, let's say, a pan masala. Okay. There is an inherent negative attitude. Absurdity will work. Think of an ad like cigarettes, which is
maybe like an Imperial Blue ad.
Yeah, cigarettes, alcohol. Any sin product, okay? Condoms, any sin product that you can think of, right? Which is basically inherently sinful. There is an inherent negative attitude about those particular products. Then if you use it, then absurdity will help.
It works.
Now, if you look at the other one, let's say for example, there is already a positive attitude. So therefore, it should rise to positive feelings. Now, if you see absurdity, it will bring it down. Right, so that's the catch.
So we can say it's a two-faced sword.
It depends upon what kind of product category you are operating. I will put it that way.
So, what do you think? What are the challenges or risks behind for a brand to go with a theme like this, absurdity in their advertising?
See, with all these kinds of ads, right? There is one problem that you have is to your core message might get lost in these all other things that you want to talk about. So if you think that your core message is important to tell, now what are the product categories where core message may be important to tell, right? Those product categories which yield superior benefits, okay? And those superior benefits may be functional benefits, right? Or it may be emotional benefits also. Wherever you think that there is a superior benefit story you want to tell, then it definitely is important that you stay away from this kind of thing. Again, if you are operating in multiple cultures, then absurdity might come. Actually, there are times where absurdity might backfire. Okay, so for example, think of a culture where in masculine culture versus feminine culture, right? So masculine cultures, people have said that in masculine cultures, gender roles are defined. Okay, and in feminine cultures, gender roles are not defined. So therefore, in masculine culture, there is always this inherent idea that male are supposed to do certain things and females are supposed to do certain things. So feminine cultures are a lot more equal. Okay, in those cultures, when you introduce something like absurdity, it might go horribly wrong. In low power distance societies, this absurdity may not work that high power distance society might work because it's funny, it's ridiculing, it's absurd. So it's okay in those because there is always a gap.
Yes. Can we say the similar thing for different age groups?
There's some age groups will be more okay than others in terms of absurdity. Possible. It's basically young people are a lot more risk seeking. Old people are lot more risk averse. However, the catch there is this, okay? In general, human beings are risk averse. Still, youngs are more risk seeking as compared to old, but the young people or old people, everybody is risk averse when it comes to, because at the end of the day, right, you have to go and buy the product. Right? So, and then think about that if it is a repeat buy, that you're going to buy again and again and again, right? It cannot be based on absurdity.
One last question, sir. When it comes to long-term effects, do you think these ads are able to change the audience perception regarding the brand?
Generally, these things decay faster. Okay? They decay faster. So people might remember the ad but may not remember the brand. Because you will always get a better joke to tell. Right? So for example, there are brands like Durex, right? They're constantly doing it. So they can do that. If you can, then it's brilliant. If you ask my recommendation that if you are in those particular categories, and then only where there's an inherently negative idea, then use by all means use absurd. But if you think that, okay, no, people are more highly involved, that people are going to have positive attitude towards the category, then I don't think it's a thing that one can use.
Thank you so much, sir. Your views were really insightful. So that brings us to the end of this episode. Do like, share, and tell us in the comment section what are your thoughts.
The Absurd Podcast.